To the restless souls, the dreamers trapped between the map and the compass. If you believe every great structure on Earth has a known architect, prepare to meet the greatest one you've never heard of. His blueprints were drawn in sand, and his only witness was the sea. The year was 1888. The place was the brutal, unforgiving coastline of Cornwall, England. Here, the Atlantic Ocean met the granite cliffs in a perpetual crashing war. This was the territory of Finian Finn Hawke, a man so bound to the sea that his skin was the color of driftwood and his eyes the shifting gray of the English Channel on a stormy morning. Finn was a lighthouse keeper, but in the small insular community of Port Isaac, he was an anomaly. A man who read Homer in ancient Greek and sketched complex engineering diagrams on scraps of oiled parchment. He carried himself with the quiet dignity of someone who understood forces far greater than man, the moon, the tides, and the relentless pressure of deep water. His passion was not merely keeping the light burning, it was solving the coastline's most intractable problem, the great erosion. For centuries, the southern flank of Port Isaac, a bustling fishing village, had been slowly consumed by the sea. Each winter storm ripped away chunks of the cliff face and swallowed meters of shoreline. The local government solution was the standard response: build a massive, straight, granite seawall. "They build against the sea," Finn would mutter to the gulls flying past his lonely perch. "They must learn to dance with her." Finn believed that the conventional, flat seawall was fundamentally flawed. It didn't deflect the energy, it merely absorbed the blow and transformed the vertical impact into an even more destructive horizontal backwash, accelerating the erosion of the seabed right in front of the wall. He observed the patterns of the waves with a scientific rigor that was centuries ahead of his time. He didn't just see a wave, he saw kinetic energy, harmonic resonance, and hydraulic pressure. The theory of the gentle curve. In his tiny lamplit room, surrounded by charts and mathematical equations, Finn developed his radical theory. He posited that the destructive energy of the wave could not be fought, but had to be redirected. His solution was a structure he called the harmonic deflector. The deflector was not a straight wall, but a series of parabolic, concave curves built at varying gradients and staggered depths. The lower shelf, a submerged, gentle ramp designed to slow the wave's velocity and increase its wavelength, effectively making it less violent before it reached the main barrier. The main curve, a high, smooth parabolic curve that would catch the rising water. Instead of resisting the force, the curve would gently guide the water upwards and then immediately redirect it to flow sideways along the coastline, dissipating its energy harmlessly along the vast, stable shoreline instead of slamming it back onto the fragile seafloor. He calculated the exact degree of the curve, the material density, and the placement relative to the dominant tidal patterns, calculations that relied on complex differential equations that even most university professors would struggle with. Finn wrote detailed letters to the Royal Society, the Admiralty, and the local council. He was met with polite indifference, academic skepticism, and outright scorn. "A lighthouse keeper teaching civil engineers?" the council head, a stout man named Mr. Harrington, scoffed. "His diagrams look like some sort of mystical spiral. We need straight walls, Mr. Hawke, not poetry." Finn, unwilling to let his village perish beneath bureaucratic arrogance, decided on a reckless course of action. The secret construction. Using his meager savings and the small profits from his father's old fishing boat, Finn began his project under the cover of the darkest nights. He recruited 3 people. Old Bess, a retired fisherwoman, the most skilled boat handler in the area, who knew the tides like her own heartbeat. She provided transport for the stone and aggregate. Thomas, the quarryman, a young man with a strong back and a thirst for challenge, who secretly supplied the specially cut, smooth-faced granite blocks Finn needed. The sea itself, his ultimate collaborator. For 2 years, under the silent witness of the moon, Finn worked. He used the lowest spring tides, when the sea retreated furthest, to lay the foundation blocks. He worked fast, placing the smooth, curving stones precisely according to his complex measurements. The process was agonizingly slow and brutally dangerous, done mostly by feel in the churning cold water. He never used cement on the main curves, trusting the interlocking geometry and the sheer weight of the custom-cut stone to hold the parabolic shape. The locals saw the scattered rock formations and dismissed them as random rubble deposits, perhaps the remnants of an older failed pier. They never saw the method, the precision, the logic. By the autumn of 1890, Fenn had completed a small but strategic section of his deflector, about 50 meters long, on the most vulnerable part of the Port Isaac coast. It was mostly submerged, a low, smooth arc of dark granite invisible to the casual eye. The fury of the north wind. The true test arrived in December 1890, when the worst winter storm in living memory slammed into the Cornish coast. The gale-force winds shrieked a warning, and the sea, thick and black, rose into mountains. The official straight granite seawall, the pride of the council, took the full force of the first giant waves. The impact was deafening. The backwash, as Fenn had predicted, ripped away the sand and shingle beneath the foundations. Cracks immediately spiderwebbed across the straight granite face. The council's wall was failing. Then the waves hit Fenn's stretch of coastline, the 50 meters protected by his unseen curving deflector. The difference was astonishing. Instead of a deafening vertical crash, the wave hit the submerged shelf and the main curve, and the sound was muffled, a deep, sighing whoosh. The curved face did its job perfectly. The wall didn't resist, it yielded. The water was guided upwards and then, following the parabolic geometry, was deflected laterally along the coast. The main impact energy of the wave was not sent back to destroy the seabed, but was smoothly distributed across a wide area. When the water finally retreated, the shingle and sand in front of Fenn's curved section were left almost untouched. The land behind the deflector was calm, protected, and stable. The next morning, the council's official, costly seawall was fractured, undermined, and crumbling. But the section in front of Port Isaac's oldest cottages, the section protected by Fenn's secret curved structure, was completely intact. The unclaimed triumph. Mr. Harrington and a team of engineers arrived to survey the devastation. They stared, slack-jawed, at the surviving section. "How is this possible?" Harrington demanded. "This section of the coast always took the worst of it. The water here, it behaves differently." The engineers measured the surrounding areas, noting the unusual pattern of the remaining sand, and the way the waves seemed to break more gently there. They determined that an unknown, natural underwater formation, perhaps a submerged ridge, must have saved that specific 50-meter stretch. Fenn Hawke, perched on his lighthouse, watched the scene through his spyglass. He saw their confusion, their failed logic, and their ultimate conclusion, that the saving grace was an act of God, not an act of engineering. He never spoke a word. His work was not for recognition, but for the safety of his home. Over the next 2 years, the council had to rebuild the failed seawall, but the engineers, puzzled by the miraculous survival of the one stretch, decided to incorporate a slight, natural curvature into their new designs, purely as an aesthetic choice, they claimed. They didn't understand why the curve worked, they only knew the straight wall had failed spectacularly. Fenn, the silent architect, watched as the very principle he had articulated, the gentle curve over the straight barrier, was adopted, bastardized, and implemented across the entire coastline, saving Port Isaac. His contribution was never recorded. His name was never attached to the blueprints. He was simply Fenn Hawke, the quiet lighthouse keeper who loved the sea too much to let it destroy his home. He died decades later, respected but forgotten. His greatest invention attributed to modern engineering evolution and site-specific geological luck. But every morning, as the tide rolls in gently towards the protected coast of Port Isaac, it is met not with a crash, but with a smooth, redirecting flow, a harmonic dance written in stone by the silent architect of the tides.